Caroline Dowd-Higgins. Thank you for listening to Your Working Life, my podcast series featuring thought leaders in the career and personal growth arena. You spend a significant portion of your life at work, so my goal is to provide you with tools, inspiration, and resources so you can enjoy your career and love your life. And I am delighted to welcome my very special guest to the show today. I've got the dynamic duo of husband and wife team, Ja-Nae Duane and Steve Fisher. Ja-Nae and Steve, welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
I'm so excited to talk about your amazing book, but let me tell the audience all about you. For over 20 years, Ja-Nae Duane focused on one mission, making life better for as many people as possible. And with that goal in mind, she founded or co-founded 5 different organizations, including Wild Women Entrepreneurs. I love it already, Ja-Nae. The Leaders and the National Artistic Effort and the Massachusetts Artistic Leaders Coalition. And husband Steve Fisher loves the future, so much so that he spent the last 20 years as an award-winning designer and strategist helping companies, governments, and his own startups leverage the best innovations to compete and win. But today, we're going to talk about your extraordinary book, The Startup Equation, a visual guidebook for building your startup. And I have to say, you two, this book is delicious. It's just so visual, beautiful. It's artistically designed. And as a career coach, I can't wait to get it in the hands of my clients who are budding entrepreneurs.
That's what we love to hear.
Absolutely. And believe me, I get a lot of books, so I say that with sincerity. But let's start from the beginning. What is the startup equation, and what was the impetus for this book?
Yeah, sure. So I'll take a crack at this. The startup equation for us really started from a conversation. Steve and I had many nights where we talked about our experiences as entrepreneurs, and they were very different depending on where we were within our lives at that time, but then also the businesses or the organizations that we were creating. And what we came to find out was that no matter where we were within our life, there was no exact science to starting and growing that business. And we found that our needs and the business models changed because of where we were as entrepreneurs, and then also what industries we were in, and then our approaches. So we then talked about the resources that there were out there and realized that there was really no one resource that you can go to that allowed you to really find out, okay, how do I get started? How do I take into consideration who I am as an entrepreneur? And then how do I grow and scale that business? And so from that, Steve and I realized that we needed to do a little more research and eventually came up with the startup equation, which is really this organic framework that starts with who you are as an entrepreneur at that time, and then what are you looking to build? Are you a lifestylist? Are you an expert? Are you a franchisee? Who are you and what is that startup path? And then how can you grow and scale a business based on some of those core elements?
And Ja-Nae, I so appreciate that. Steve, I'm going to let you chime in a second.
Sure.
I just want to tell you from a career coaching perspective and seat, so many people miss that first opportunity to self-actualize and figure out who am I in this entrepreneurial space. And I'm so grateful that you do start from that ground zero. Steve, chime in. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's the key start of this is who you are, because many news articles out there are about making the $1 billion company. There's going to be so many entrepreneurs over the next 5-10 years that maybe 1% of them get funding or even become and 1% become big companies. But the rest of us, maybe just want a side business. Maybe you just you're a lawyer in a big law firm and you want to just have a small practice. Maybe you're a mother who's been out of work, just staying at home for a few years and you want to start something on the side. There's more of that. And I think the one thing that we learned looking at 200 startup ecosystems around the world is that the formal entrepreneurship is prevalent, and there's a big model for it. The informal entrepreneurship is even more so. So we wanted a book that appeals to everyone, but to your point, is the self-actualization is critical to get you on the path so that you ask the right questions and you look at it through that lens.
And the timing is perfect, you two. Again, I'm so grateful because I see this as a resource for my clients and the individuals with whom I work. We're calling this the gig economy. You know, interesting, Steve,
Yes.
that you mentioned something on the side. That's so common. There's a new term. You're probably well aware of it. It's called the Plan C professional. Those individuals have a full-time day job, and I say that in air quotes. It doesn't have to happen during the day, but it's a full-time job with benefits and salary, and then they're flexing those entrepreneurial muscles on the side. But this is the rule book, right? This is the guidebook to help people get to that place too, and I'm incredibly grateful.
That's great. If I may, if I can just kind of play onto that, in a recent Intuit report, they looked at by 2020, 40% of just the U.S. workers. We're not talking about the global aspect of where this podcast will go. Is U.S. workers will be independent contractors, and to your point, is one of the trends we have in Chapter 3. We call the liquid workforce, and this is about fluid workforces, fluid locations, fluid hours. This is not you're not going to have the job till retirement, obviously, but at the same time, you're going to have a portfolio career. You're going to climb the corporate lattice, if you will, instead of a ladder.
Yes.
So, and sometimes you just jump off and you're going to do your own thing. I think, and JaNae's experienced, that and seen that in many of her clients as well.
So speaking of global impact, just to give you a framework for this show is international in scope and certainly reaches other English-speaking countries, primarily Canada, Australia, and England. And I am noticing through guests and experts whom I interview and listeners that the entrepreneurial boom is certainly happening in other countries as well. So again, timing is perfect. So you illustrate something that was new to me. What are the bug trends that are impacting startups? You talk about this in the book.
Well, we have what are called the 6 forces, and the first one being the liquid workforce. That is who kind of changing jobs, moving around. The next is the era of the maker. That's really about kind of the 3D printing, being able to really bring manufacturing to a person to a small level. JaNae, if you want to kind of take maybe the other 3, there's the other one that I'm big on is the sharing economy. Because that is about we're shifting from this consumption-based ownership model to sharing with each other, or just really it's not about like Rachel Botsman puts it best in her collaborative consumption book is it's what's mine is yours. It's a model that you don't have to own it, but if you still want to use it. Mm-hmm. There's a few others. JaNae, you want to talk about some of those too?
Sure. So the other big sort of huge shifts that we're seeing, and we just talked about it really alongside of the liquid workforce, is that new work order, the sort of rise of the independent worker. No one is staying at one place, and so really looking at that portfolio career, how you can work from anywhere through connectivity and through the ability to work in co-working spaces or just anywhere around the world. We also have what we are calling the connected and engaged consumer. The consumer no longer wants to just allow for a brand to market to them. They want to be and experience that co-creation of what that business or what that brand is, and how can you as either a consumer or as an entrepreneur really leverage that. And then we also have the creative economy to round out the big forces. No matter what city or town we're looking at, every workforce really starts from the creatives, and they're the ones that are really building and shaping each industry and then also these local economies. So altogether, these 6 paradigm shifts are changing not only the way that we work, but also the way that we live.
So true. It's fascinating. One wonders down the road if startup companies of today will even have office spaces, right? The brick and mortar. And I realize if there's production involved, there are obviously needs for infrastructure, but the opportunity to work remotely, to work virtually, to have that kind of flex schedule can impact the bottom line of a business.
Hands down. And we're seeing more and more people and companies shift towards that virtual workplace, if you will. But it really depends on the business, and it really depends on also the needs of that company. So we will continue to see hybrids of what that can look like.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if I could add just one more point is I think you're just kind of like I live in the future is one of the things that excites me is the kind of the second machine age. Because this, along with now how much you feel about AI, and I just wanted for the record, if the robot overlords are coming, I welcome them. But Elon Musk, it's not about the malice or the competence of these systems, but really the displacement of skills.
Right.
The automation of it. When you have autonomous vehicles, Internet of Things, these things are not it's shifting to JaNae's point is like it's shifting from not about are you at work or time and space, but it's about placement and presence. And that is a big, big paradigm shift for people who are trying to hire. Because you think about it, if you can automate, you might be reshoring and bringing things home. But at the same time, your talent pool is not just about your local city. It's the entire world.
Exactly.
And that's compelling, but it's also your whole potential customer base, which is also exciting.
It's exciting, and it's also difficult to harness. Not impossible, but it takes a certain process to be able to harness that and market that and promote that.
Yes.
So, JaNae and Steve, let's talk about the hot areas for investors right now. And I'll preface that by saying so many entrepreneurs put the investor cart before the horse, and you have to be ready to be invested in. So perhaps you could speak about that as well. But start out with sharing what the hot areas are for investors right now.
So, Steve, you want to start with this? Because we each have different areas that we tend to focus on.
Sure.
Yeah. I did mention things like autonomous vehicles and other things. I think let's start with just the investor profile. So you have so many different ways to raise money now. Crowdfunding, obviously your friends and family. There are different opinions and schools of thought on that, but there are so many different places to raise money. Venture capital is for a very small group. And if you think they invest not only in the trends, but there's also timing involved because they want to look at where things are going. If you have an idea for an Airbnb idea, that they invested in that a couple years ago. They're not there. But where the hot areas, I see is Internet of Things, especially the industrial side with what General Electric is doing and IBM and Cisco, autonomous vehicles, nanotechnology, quantum computing is a couple years away, but 3D printing we mentioned, that is transformational. And material science, so you're seeing what, and I'll let JaNae kind of take on this, is that there's a really great talk by Klaus Schwab, who is the creator of Davos. He talks about the fourth industrial revolution, where we're really seeing a merger of the physical, the digital, and the biological. So that's where people are looking at. The investors are looking at VR, AR, augmented reality. These technologies that in the next 5 years are going to change how we work, how we are entertained, and the context in which we live. So that's what I see is where they're really, really into right now is the machine stuff as well. JaNae?
Yeah. And to build off of that, and Steve, you made a really great point, what we're also seeing is the fact that, to go back to the funding side and the funding vehicle, it's projected that crowdfunding will actually surpass VC funding this year and could reach up to $36 billion by 2020.
Wow.
So as startups think about how they start to raise money or where they look to finance their ideas, it's not necessarily what are the trends that VCs are looking at, but really what do people want to invest in? And to build off of some of the trends that Steve had mentioned, two others that I think are really big right now are clean tech and then also fintech. And, those who are looking to change the game in financial services, really New York is the only place in the United States to go in order to really establish yourself. But otherwise, heading on over to the UK, that's probably the biggest hub globally for fintech. But honestly, at the end of the day, it's not really what a VC is looking for. It's what are these trends, and then how can you hook into the individuals that you know and have them support the idea that you have.
So let's take it a step further, JaNae and Steve. What is the role of design when building a startup?
I will allow the designer to talk.
You go, girl.
For those of you listening, your fellow designers, you definitely are living in a golden age. I think what's been interesting to watch. I've been in the technology industry for over 20 years, and it's either very engineering driven or very sales driven, and that goes for many corporations. I think what's very interesting is beyond the technology industry, but everyone is design thinking as a way to solve problems. Looking at design as a strategic competitive advantage is now in everybody's. If you're in the C-suite and you're not talking about it, you're going to have a big problem in 5 years. Because if you think about the ways that we interface with systems through wearable devices, eventually augmented reality or VR glasses, through tablets, all these different ways that we consume and be productive require design. So you could talk about, ambient computing and responsive design, all the terms, but when it comes down to it is look at design as a strategic competitive advantage, because someone is going to take those 7 seconds, and if they're on a mobile device, they need to be able to accomplish a task, what you're setting out, whether that's buying your product, finding out about your company. So use design as literally a strategic weapon to make you better than your competitor.
Oh, I like that. A strategic weapon. Well put. So, Steve and JaNae, let's talk about the ideal audience for the book, The Startup Equation. Is it the person with the cottage industry? Is it someone who's more immersed into a scalable business? Help us understand who should be reading this extraordinary book.
Yeah, JaNae, definitely go for it. It's you. It's all you.
Yeah, well, I will say that the beauty of the book, and this has been the feedback that we've gotten, and it had been our intention, so we're just happy that we're validated around this, is that there are multiple audiences. So whether or not you have an idea and you're looking to start, or you have to start a business out of necessity, the book isn't just for the person looking to build, the next SaaS product. It's really for anyone who's a lifestylist, all the way to someone who's trying to be a franchisee, to someone who's building an app and trying to essentially scale and then have it purchased. But the beauty of this book, and it's being called the Startup Bible, which is fantastic, is that you can be a small business, brick and mortar, have been around for, say, 3 to 5 years, and there are pieces of this book that allow you to then scale and innovate and rethink your strategy of where you need to head for the next 3 to 5 years. So I say that it really falls into those 2 buckets of either that beginner who's just starting out and not really sure where to start or who they are as an entrepreneur, and then also that small business that's really looking to scale, but they're stuck. And they're, everything that they've done has worked thus far, but now, they have to change their strategy in order to grow some more. And so that's really where our book is most helpful.
Wonderful. And again, the name of the book is The Startup Equation, a visual guidebook for building your startup. And visual is so important. This book is just gorgeous. And I'm a visual learner, so I really appreciate the amazing illustrations. And it's terrific. Can't say enough good things about it. So how do we buy it? And how do we follow the 2 of you online?
Absolutely. So you can buy it on Amazon, or you can go to your local Barnes & Noble, and if they don't have it, feel free to order it. Also, you can follow us at www.thestartupequation.com, or our handles are, I'm at The Sun Queen, and Steve is at Stephen Fisher.
And that's with a V.
Yeah, that's Stephen with a V and Fisher with no C.
Excellent, excellent. Well, you 2 are extraordinary. I am just delighted that you were able to share your wisdom and expertise today. The book is extraordinary. I wish you continued success, and I thank you for joining me on the show today.
Oh, thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us. It's been great.
Absolutely. And I want to thank all of you for tuning in to Your Working Life, where my goal is to help you design your career destiny so it doesn't happen by default. Career and life satisfaction is possible, and it's time to embrace what you love doing so you can do more of it. My show is now available on iTunes, YouTube, Podbean, and Stitcher. Leave a comment because I always appreciate hearing from my listeners. I'm Caroline Dowd-Higgins. Take good care.